Welcome to Pat's Cast, the unofficial Grand Pats podcast. It's our 24-25 season wrap-up show. We got Dante, Kevin, Drew, and Chris here tonight. How is everybody doing tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
Excellent.
I'm doing well, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sun's out. It was a nice day.
Feels like it's been forever since the season ended already.
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
Kevin, Chris, Drew, looking forward to today's episode. As I guess to piggyback off your comment, the weather's nice. Snow's starting to melt, which is good. Looking forward to hopefully a pretty exciting off season for the Pats.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's kind of the takeaway of this season, right? Is hope for the next year or progress to next year, right? Like obviously when we last talked in the mid-season there, you know, not all the trades had happened, but more trades that had happened, and in the back half of the season was a little tougher, you know, especially in the win-loss columns. But there is that hope next year that this team can progress. Just kind of quick thoughts in the second half of the season for you guys. Dante?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the second half, wins and loss-wise, actually was the exact same. I think they had 8 wins in the first half, 8 wins in the second half. So I guess wins and loss-wise, relatively the same. I did think that they got better. They were in highly competitive games. The scores were close. I know at the end of the day, it's still over 40 losses, which is tough. But we did see a lot of improvement, especially towards the end of the season with Zach Pantelakis, finishing with 14 goals, I believe is what he finished with, which I think is pretty good for a 17-year-old. Julie Mays had 12, finished with 40-plus points. We saw Matt Peranich finish around a point per game in his last 8 or 9 games. Colton Bridgman was finally able to score that goal towards the end of the season, which I thought was the moment of the year.
Finally, eh?
Finally, yeah. Now 2 career goals for Colton Bridgman. Couldn't happen to a better guy, as he scored with, 3 games left in the season, so that was pretty neat. But I thought we saw a lot of improvements. It was tough all around on the coaching staff. Al Miller, Dale Durkach, everybody around, from Gord Pritchard in the business office, myself, all the coaches. It's not easy on the players as well to come to the rink, try your best, which is what they did, compete, and that's what Brad Haroff asked from the group, and unfortunately be outmatched because if you look at the last 10 games of the season, those were crucial games for their opponents. Saskatoon, PA, battling for that second seed going into the WHL playoffs. Swift Current was still looking for a position. They're a good team as well. The last, couple weeks of the season was a pretty hard stretch, given that the teams that they were playing, Brandon included, were fighting for playoff position. So hopefully, when we're recording this episode next year, it's the Regina Pats fighting for position in February, March versus, getting ready to pack their bags and go golfing. So looking forward to hopefully a playoff run next season. I do think this team has to make the playoffs next year in order to take a step moving forward. I know the coaching staff thinks that. Al Miller thinks that. I think not making the playoffs next year will not be acceptable. You can't not make the playoffs 3 years in a row. I think next year they're looking to make the playoffs. So those are my thoughts, I guess.
Got to give the boys props, though. Half the team was 17 and under.
That's right.
And they did compete most times. There was the odd game where they kind of stunk it out, but they did well. Got to give the boys credit. And at the end of the season, they were playing with guys injured and hurt, and got 15-year-olds playing all the time. And I think they did okay at the end. It sucks that they lost so many games, and it sucks that they won a specific game that kind of cost them a little bit of positioning for the draft lottery. But it is what it is. Next year, they got to get better. That's all it is.
Yeah. Wins-loss-wise, it kind of was what I expected, especially after some of the big moves were made before Christmas there. And then, it's obviously tough when you're as young as you are. But, I look back to a couple games against Medicine Hat, and they were really, really good games. And I thought they played Swift Current really, really well all season long and, beat them a couple of times as well. And Swift Current, they're a lower-seeded playoff team, but they're still a playoff team. So I really look back at those Medicine Hat games, though, because they're obviously, the top of the Eastern Conference. So it just goes to show you there's something building, something brewing there, and I think there's a core group of players there now that will be together for a while, and obviously the off season's very, very young, so there could be a lot of exciting things that happen to this franchise in the weeks ahead here.
And I think that starts with the draft lottery coming up this week. I think
we were
the league has not actually released the date, but
yeah.
It
Sounds
is
like
this
it's the 10th, yeah.
It
Of
is the
course,
10th.
yeah, Kevin and I were just talking about that earlier today and said, of course, we're recording right before the draft lottery. Should have had happened a couple weeks ago in a
When it
regular
was
season.
supposed to.
But obviously with
Penticton pushed
with the
things back.
Penticton stuff
Yeah.
and them getting all that stuff figured out, it's pushed the draft lottery back. But yeah, like you said, Drew, you know, there's some good performances down the stretch. I also say the Lethbridge games there, you know, a really, really solid playoff team. You know, Medicine Hat's obviously got the high-flying scoring. They're a little loose defensively. He's seen Swift Current take a game off them and give them a little bit of a run in the playoffs here. But and the one takeaway when Kevin and I sat down with Al was like, you know, he said the leash was real short next year, right? And like Drew, Dante said, you know, they've got to make the playoffs, you know, and Al's not going to say that out loud, but I mean, they gotta make that. The team's got to figure that out to make that step. Like you said, they've got to make the playoffs next year.
Well, a couple years ago, I mean, I remember hearing Brad Haroff talk about, you know, the parity around the WHL. You look at Seattle making it to the league final, winning it all the next year. You look at the Moose Jaw Warriors. They had a couple of decent playoff runs where they won a round, right? 21-22, they won a round. 22-23, they won a round. Lost to Winnipeg. And then last year they win the whole thing, right? You can't go from not making the playoffs, not having that experience because, I mean, there are still some players on this Pats team that are returning that do have some playoff experience. McNutt with Prince George, Caden Brown, obviously, with the Everett Silvertips and Prince George as well. Colton Bridgman had a game, played in Game 7. He did.
Okay,
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Other than that, like, there's really nobody that has playoff experience. So in order to
Maze
compete,
should have some,
Maze would, yeah.
a little bit, yeah. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty slim, right?
Yeah, it's pretty slim. Ashton Brown, right? But, like, in order for this team to hopefully peak when these 07s are 19, right, and the 06s are 20, whichever you have left, and the 08s are 18, right, which is in 2 years, you have to have some sort of success. You can't just go straight into when these players are 19 and say, okay, now you guys need to go on a run. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. Okay, now Maze and Hamilton, you guys got to bring us,
championship
to the promised land.
Yeah, you can't
I
go
shouldn't
from
say the promised land.
The playoffs are the promised land, Dante.
Okay, I'll say the playoffs. I mean, hey, listen, I'll take anything. I'll take winning a round or making the playoffs compared to what I've had the last 4 years because, to be honest, it sucks. Talking to Tanner Howell the other day and seeing him win a round, I know I'm not a player, but I want to broadcast playoff hockey. I want to broadcast, you know, games that mean a lot. When I'm going downstairs and interviewing the coaches and talking to the players, I want to talk about going into games and how important they are, why the 2 points are so important versus being completely out of it for, I don't know, the last 3 months of the season.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
So I think it's fun for the fans. It's fun for us when we're doing the shows, when we're talking to the players after the game. It's fun for everyone when things are competitive and games mean a lot and we're talking about, okay, they need to win this game. Points are so important. And I don't know, it's exciting to call playoff hockey and games that mean a lot in February and March. So I'm not saying that games in October, November don't mean anything, but when you know that the team wants to make the playoffs and they're focused on that, then I just think, you know, everybody's a lot more motivated. The coaches are motivated. The fans are excited to come to the rink. So at the end of the day, winning is the most important thing as well as development, and hopefully this team can get on track next year.
Yeah, I think maybe Ryan could bring some of that experience from Spokane, right? Like they had a rough couple years, and then, you know, they had some high picks, and they were able to move up last year. And then you look at what Spokane's doing this year, obviously. So something like that, and he can bring some of that. And yeah, like you said, you know, those Saskatoon games, you know, 3 years ago, like how fun was that? Like the building was just buzzing. It was just so fun to go to the rink. Yeah, we're missing that because it's been along with that little teasers. It hasn't been very much since, you know, this team has had some really good success, right? So it's been a while.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to 2023. They're daydreaming a little bit, remembering when I lost it on that one Bedard goal, and just I'm getting excited already. And I think everybody expects it because it's just the way that junior hockey works. But at the same time, you have to earn it, and you have to go out there. It's not given to you. It's not going to be the toughest division next year in the league, but it's certainly not going to be easy. And I think making the playoffs starts with winning games in September, October, and November. You got to get out to a good start. You can't put yourself behind the 8 ball right away. Get the guys some confidence, and they can see, okay, hey, we've grown a little bit here in the summer, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest keys. And it's awesome to have a 20-year-old starter who had such a good season in Kelton Pine this past year. So the pieces are falling in, and like I said a little bit earlier, there's going to be some more exciting things that happen in this offseason, potentially some more trades. So there's a decent team going into this season, but it's also going to be improved by Al Miller in the offseason, I think.
Well, I mean, as we're doing this podcast right now, we have Prince George and Portland on Victory Plus. We're watching the game, and you look at Prince George, right? A community that, generally speaking, a team that hasn't had a ton of success in their franchise history. They've been a pretty good team the last couple of years. This is probably where they're going to peak as far as Height leaving and Zemer's gone and Vallis is gone, etc. And just look at how full their rink is, and look at just how that team being in the mix has kind of driven that community and has gotten that community extremely excited. I think the same will go for the community of Regina, just thinking back to 22-23 and just how excited everybody was for the playoffs. I think everybody in the entire city wants to see this team in the playoffs, but the more meaningful games, the more impactful games, the more exciting this team gets with the younger players as they continue to grow and improve. I think it's going to be a really special place to play. It's going to be a fun place to come to as far as coming to the rink and being around, a passionate crowd and a passionate fan base. It's only just going to make the community, come together and rally around this team. We saw what happened in Moose Jaw last year. So I think the team is heading in the right direction under Alan Miller. This offseason is going to be crucial, not just with the draft capital that they have and how they use it and what players they're going to pick up, because those players are a couple of years away. But, you talk about having a clean slate with imports, right? Is Nestersohl going to come? He's an impact player. Do they go get an import goalie? Do they go get an import defenseman? I think that would help as far as, a lot of young D on the back end.
Yes,
with Reese
veteran. Yeah.
Exactly. With Reese Hamilton coming back, Colton Bridgman, you look at McNutt being a 20-year-old. I think he could have a Parker Berg-type 20-year-old season, to be quite honest. I mean, he had 30 points last year. That's not bad. Pine and net, Tabashnik has had a great playoffs with the Pac Canadians. Congratulations to them heading to the TELUS Cup. They just won Westerns. So he potentially has a chance to be the backup goalie for Kelton Pine next year. Should be pretty good. You never know what opportunities could arise, right? The Americans as well, right? Some of these Americans could come over, whether it's, some listed players, whether it's Americans that they've drafted. Hordachuk comes in next year at 16. I'm not saying a 16-year-old has to be an impact player or anything like that, but I think there's just a lot of different avenues in which this team can improve, and I think there's no better person than Alan Miller, given the connections he has and just how good of a recruiter that guy can be. So those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, no, he discussed that, right? He mentioned names, and he's obviously there's some new Americans on the list and stuff
Zimmerman.
like that. Yeah, Zimmerman, and he said he's been down to see Nestersohl again, and so he's really he's really pushing it. And he said, well, there's gonna be more guys than spots. So just because you're on the roster this year doesn't mean you're guaranteed a spot next year. And better competition makes you better and makes the team better as well. So he's gonna do whatever. Obviously, you've seen what he did this year, how many trades he made. He's not gonna be too shy to make a move if he thinks it's gonna make the team better, right?
Personally, I do think adding an 06 would help this team.
Yeah.
Right? You look at some of the 06s that are coming back. There's only 3. Is that correct, Kevin? There's Zach Moore, Keats Fawcett, and Colton Bridgman. Those are the only 06s that are on the roster, right?
Yeah. So adding another 19 would be... I
think adding an 06 would help, whether it's an 06 on the back end or maybe an 06 center, right? I don't know who's available. Again, these teams are in playoffs at the time that we're recording this podcast. But with at least it gives Alan Miller options as far as what he could do with the amount of draft picks that he has. For example, he has 2 firsts and 3 seconds just in this draft alone. Next year he has 2 firsts and I believe a handful of seconds and a couple of thirds, right? But I look at maybe a 20-year-old that might come cheap as well, right, to create that internal competition. For example, I look at what Prince George has been able to do with some of the 20-year-olds they brought in over the years. Chase Wheatcroft, by the way, who had 100 and something points, finished second in league scoring behind Bedard in 2022-23, only costed Mark Lamb a 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You've got to find those diamonds in the rough that, take that step.
Zach Funk was another guy that went up to Prince George and almost scored 70 goals.
Yeah.
And
came out of nowhere, right?
I don't.
much, yeah.
The price wasn't too high either to get him.
No.
So those players are out there. They are available. Alan Miller didn't pay a lot for John Babcock. He was pretty serviceable. I think he was a good leader. Those are just examples of how you can improve your team with having those options as far as draft picks. But if you don't have the draft picks, then you're stuck. At least you're in the conversation. At least you can make the phone call.
Yeah, you can make a move if there's a move to be made, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's saying, "Hey, we've got this guy, we got to move him," the Pats can say, "Hey, we'll take him." Right?
And guys, one thing that I thought about on our drive to Chris's house before recording the show, okay? So Alan Miller has all these draft picks, okay? So that means teams are short draft picks because he has a lot of different picks, right? So there's going to be some shuffling based off where teams are in terms of their cycle. So if a team needs to retool some assets as far as maybe moving some older players out, well, that's where these teams will go look at RinkNet and they'll see all the teams that have the most draft picks, and they might call Alan Miller and say, "Hey, you have a 3rd-round pick in this draft. We want to say they're eyeing a certain player, right? What would it take?" Okay, either you move down for an extra pick, right? And you create another asset for future. So, for example, if, say, a team wants a 3rd in this draft and say, "Okay, you got to give me a 4th next year and your 3rd this year just to move up." Mm-hmm. You make that move because now you just added 2 assets.
Yeah.
Right? If say, for example, you think you can get your player that you have on your list a couple of picks later.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So that's just an example. Or I could say, "Hey, we had a conversation about player X. We badly need a pick in this round. Would you be interested in moving this pick for this player?" And then that move you have the decision whether you say, "No, the player that we want to take in this draft is who we want," or, and plus, teams have to shed 20-year-olds as well. Like, there comes a time where you can't keep everybody, right?
Yeah.
You can only bring so many to camps, and some guys get traded in the offseason, some guys go on waivers, and that remains to be seen, right?
Teams have to make spots when they do the draft too, so players
Exactly.
come available
That
that
too.
way too.
Yeah.
So
There'll be a lot of shuffling once the playoffs comes to a close, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously they haven't announced dates for all the drafts coming up yet. It's obviously getting pushed back, right? It's got to happen after the season because you can't have a dispersal draft or the expansion draft.
Oh, yeah.
During the season, right? Yeah, so you got to have that. So every team's going to lose one player if you don't make a deal of some sort, right? So you're going to lose a player there, and then you're going to have your U.S. draft and then the prospects draft. So like you said, Kevin, there's going to be some opening spots for players there. Maybe the Pats, okay, we can't use all our picks. Maybe they use the second to move up to get somebody that they really like, right? You've got the high first, you got the low first, and then you got your 3 seconds. So maybe there's some movement there. They want to get somebody that they really like, maybe later in that first round or early in that second, and they package one of those seconds to move up and get 3 top end guys here this year. So, but yeah, it's kind of all in the wind, right? There's lots happening, and we'll see how it plays out first.
Suddenly people see the advantage, like Dante explained and you just explained, Chris, to having all those picks. When people who are questioning trading players away for just picks, well, suddenly right there you see why it can be such an advantage, especially down the road. And yeah, the ball's in Al Miller's court, absolutely.
Yeah, and they had too many skaters to begin with right around that Christmas mark when we talked. Like, they had to move some guys just for some picks, and so it's almost a win-win, right? You move a guy, you get some picks, you open a spot for these younger guys to play more, and like Al said, he wanted the younger guys to play, and we've seen 15s getting a bunch of experience at the end of the year here.
Yeah, and there's some good prospects coming through the pipeline as well, right? It's going to be interesting to see on, like, I think some of the 08s are going to have to make the team that weren't on the team last year just to have, some 17-year-old players. And some of the 09s are going to be, chomping at the bits for spots as well. I think the experience for Failer, Hanby, Paul, Drake Mooney, although he didn't play in a game but was around, and of course Aiden Wagner is only going to make them more hungry this offseason to try to make the team as a 16-year-old next year. I think you can ask all of those guys and say, hey, what are you going to do this offseason? And they're all going to say, well, I want to make the Pats as a 16-year-old. So those guys are going to be fighting for spots. You have some of your, 08s, say a Jet Deschamps or a Fenton Mann as an example. We saw him play a game that are going to be, try to crack the back end as well. Great internal competition. I think it only motivates them in the summer because there's no certainty. There's no guaranteed spots. Like, none of those guys are high-end picks. They're good players, but they're still going to have to prove themselves at spring camp in June or late May, and they're going to have to prove themselves at main camp as well. And we'll see which 07s come back ready to play, right? There's going to be a lot of 18-year-old players, and in order to make room for some 16s and 17s that are going to be trying to make the team, and 2 imports, some of the 07s that are going to be 18 are going to have to go. So it's a good problem to have, but again, we'll see what happens. Again, we're not around these kids in the summer, but I'm sure they're going to be doing their best to improve, and the ones that don't work the hardest are the ones that won't be on the team.
Yeah, for sure. I think Al's really bringing up the talent floor. Like, we haven't seen that in a while, right? You had some high-end talent, but the quality really dropped off here, and I think Al's really working on that, bringing in more and more talent, and it's just pushing the guys, and it weeds out the guys that just aren't going to make it, right? And all these 17s aren't going to be, aren't going to play out in the end, right? It's just the way it is. Some of these 16s might not work out, right? We've seen all the 3 16s this year have pretty decent seasons. Can they take a step as well, right? So it's a good problem to have, like I said, Drew, and it's just nice to see that the talent is coming in, and Al did that in Moose Jaw, right? It took him a while, but he had some good teams, and he made progress there, right?
Yeah, he definitely has kind of a baseline plan that he tweaks a little bit differently depending on where he is, for sure. And you're right, there's suddenly a lot of depth coming in, or it could be a very deep team very soon. So it sets up for, I think, an extremely competitive training camp in early September, because Al even said himself the leash is going to be shorter this year because of the expectations rising up a notch or two. So I think right out of the gate you're going to see some really competitive hockey, even when it's just guys on the same team going at it, fighting for spots, just because of that depth that's there now, and the talent pool that's starting to build.
Let's hope it's competitive.
Let's hope.
That's the
but
plan.
I would feel it would be, yeah. You always hope, but I think for sure it's possibly going to be one that's you might see some scraps and stuff like that, because there's a lot of guys that are going to be good enough to play on that team, but like Dante said, there's only a certain amount of spots. Yeah,
going to be really interested to see on how Cohen Clausen and Zach Lansford and Cameron Kuzma improve over the course of the summer. I thought they were really coming into their own as far as the way they played towards the end of the season. Obviously, before Clausen got injured, I thought he was, really coming on. And then, like we talked about, some of the 07s who had real good ends to the season. I thought Ashton Brown was starting to develop into a Braxton Whitehead type player as far as like playing in that type of role, maybe a Zane Rowan type player, a third or fourth line guy that can, take, kill penalties and stuff like that, and maybe score the odd goal here and there. And those players are important. You need those role players on your team, and I think Ashton Brown potentially, fits a potential role like that. Zach Pantelakis clearly has the skill. He can shoot the puck. He's a decent skater. He can skate. Jace Eglin, I thought, was probably one of the most improved players on the team. When he first came, it took him a little bit of time to get adjusted, but I thought, he started to really come on towards the end of the season. Matt Peranich, small but really smart, smooth skating, puck moving defenseman that I believe, in time will turn into a really good WHL player. And then, Reese Hamilton, I know he got injured towards the end of the season, but I think he's like, there's no question that compared to the numbers he had last year at 16, that it was a little bit of a down season for him. Getting traded is not easy. Not getting off to the greatest start with Calgary isn't easy based off having a new coach come in, and it was kind of a clean slate for Calgary from what I understand. And, Reese wasn't getting the ice time and obviously asked for a trade and ended up in Regina. And I do believe that he's going to turn into a really good player, and hopefully the NHL draft side of things works out for him. But regardless if he gets picked decently high or not, I do think that, his skating ability and everything else that he brings to the ice is going to translate. It's just a matter of time before, he gets back on his feet. I think Reese needs to just kind of forget about this season and just, get motivated and focus on next year. Like, the thing about Reese, I don't think a lot of people know this. Like, he lives with Landon Dupont in the summer in Calgary. And I think being around a guy like Landon Dupont is only going to help him get better. Mm-hmm. Right? I know Dupont's 2 years younger than him, but he's an exceptional status player. He's a very good player. He's a point-per-game defenseman this year. Probably, should win the WHL Rookie of the Year, right? There's some good options, but I think he'd be right at the top for my pick. So I think that only helps Reese Hamilton get better because he's going to be training with him every single day.
Mm-hmm. And I think starting off the season here in Regina, right, with the camp and everything, and just going through that.
The same coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Same coach.
Right.
From talking to Brad Curl in Calgary there, the broadcaster, the Hitman, when Paul McFarland came in and took over as the head coach of the Calgary Hitmen after they let go Steve Hamilton, who's done a great job, obviously, with the Everett Silvertips. They're up on Seattle right now in that series 3-2 at the time that we record this podcast. But, it seemed like Steve Hamilton and Reese Hamilton were kind of on the same page as far as his development plan and stuff like that. Paul came in, and it was kind of a clean slate. And, from what I understand from talking to Brad Curl, didn't get first power play time with Yakimchuk not there right off the hop. It was actually Hunter Ora who was playing the majority of those minutes. And, for Reese, with 8 goals and 30-odd points the year before, it's kind of like, whoa, well, hold on a minute. I just did this at 16, and now you're going to throw me to the bottom at 17? So when you have a coaching change and you have a coach come in with NHL experience and you're a player that believes that you should be playing in certain positions and you're not, it can become quite difficult. So I think Reese coming back with a coach that knows his game, same coaching staff, is only going to help him. Because as a young player, when you go through a coaching change, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I think Paul's done a great job with the Calgary Hitmen, right? I think him and Dan DeSilva would probably be my picks for the Head Coach of the Year award. But that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens there. But, yeah, kind of a long-winded answer and long-winded kind of remark on my end. But as far as Reese Hamilton goes, I mean, the talent's there. He has good relationships with the staff on the Regina Pats. He's known Dale Durkach for a very long time. He's known Tristan Fry for a very long time, going back to when Tristan coached the Brick team as an assistant coach. He's a really good kid, multi-sport athlete, loves baseball, loves golf. He's not just a one-trick pony. And, I really do hope for a lot of success for Reese, and hopefully he gets drafted. Whether he gets drafted in the 5th or 6th round or gets drafted in the 3rd round, it really doesn't matter.
No, and like Kevin and I said, maybe some fresh eyes on him, from the NHL side of things, and getting some feedback from them, going to a camp there this fall or this summer, if there's a rookie camp or whatever they have, is probably really good for him, right? Just get some more development and just get some more thoughts on his game and where he can progress and kind of come back to Regina with the ground running.
Yeah, going to a pro camp in the summer would help as well. Like I think Reese is going to get drafted. Colton Bridgman is kind of on the edge. We'll see when the Central Scouting final rankings come out. They should come out fairly soon. We'll see where they rank. We'll see where they get drafted, if Colton gets drafted, where Reese goes. And I think that training camp in the fall, that summer development camp will only help them because they'll just get feedback.
Yeah.
And it'll probably help their confidence a lot.
I don't.
And I'm not saying that both of them lack confidence at all. I just think that it's only going to help their mental
Exactly.
side of things. No.
Yeah.
It'll help him with the next step.
Yeah. I don't. If Colton doesn't get drafted, I'm sure he's going to go to a camp somewhere. I think that's probably a given. But yeah, it's kind of on the edge. If he
6'4", 6'5" right-handed shot defenseman. Who doesn't need a body to fill a spot in the summer?
Yeah.
And his hockey IQ is really good defensively.
Yeah.
I thought that was like one of the best parts of his game is just how smart he is with the puck in his own end, and dumps it out when there's no safe pass, and makes a pass when he can. And we saw like when he scored that goal there at the end of the season, he was jumping up
Nice
more
read,
jumping up more in the rush and successfully doing it too. Like he's actually got some pretty good wheels on him too, so he could rush the puck and create scoring opportunities on his own. So I fully believe Colton Bridgman can be and will be a pro someday for sure.
Well, Colton Bridgman goes and does power skating with Maddox Schultz's dad, Dave Schultz, the power skating guru in Regina.
Yeah.
So that has to help, right?
Yeah, he's just like you said. He's just so smart on his own end. He's not flashy. He just gets the job done. And the NHL still needs that. Pro teams still need that, right? Not everybody can score 20 goals from the back end, right? You got to have the shutdown guys. And yeah, it's not the prettiest job, but hey, it's still a job, right?
And he's got the size.
Yeah.
And he's a righty. So
and a righty. Yeah, that's
almost
how you
gimme.
sign your own contract, being a right-handed
Pretty
defenseman,
much.
right? So.
How about Deschamps? Like I like his ceiling. I like his upside too.
Yeah, he really kind of took a step, like all these young guys, right after Christmas. You've seen the 16s, like how they took the steps.
Well, even
after
when he
Christmas.
first came onto the scene, like I liked him to start the year as well.
Yeah, he's got a low offensive side to him, and he's got the physical side too, which is nice to see, right? Everybody likes to see that. This game is going a little more, talent-wise. It's still nice to see some guys that have some grit to it, and can still play too, right? They're not just there like the old guys, just plugs, right? That were just there to fight, but he's coming, right?
He's not afraid to get the dirt on himself.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: with Matt Peranich, do you think he comparable to a McCutcheon as a smaller type defenseman that has a long career in the WHL, like 300 games, right?
I see that. I do see that. Yeah.
35 to 40 point guy every year.
Yeah.
Right? Like he scored 7 goals, guys.
For sure.
Let's not forget he scored 7 goals this year.
Yeah.
He had 0 last year. It's not bad.
One thing I think the team really has, and maybe they don't have necessarily a ton of experience on the back end, but I think they got a really good mix of offensive defensemen and stay-at-home defensemen.
Well, you lose Babcock, right?
You
So
lose
now
Babcock, but
think about that now.
that's that's obviously a big loss. But McNutt's going to step in and kind of fill a similar role and maybe provide a little bit more offense, I think, than Babcock would. But, Peranich and Hamilton, and then Braden Smith and Deschamps is kind of two-way defensemen, and then Bridgman is the big stay-at-home defenseman. I think there's a really good mix of guys that can provide offense, but guys that are really good stay-at-home defensemen. So I think that's a really good tool to have in the box for the Pats, because that's really valuable to have a good mix like that.
Well, you've seen how the pairings got switched up, right? It was Bridgman and Babcock for the first half of the season, and then then it was Peranich and Bridgman, right? That's obviously that's not your power play pair, but that's a good 5-on-5 pair, right? You got your skater, and you got your guy that will sit at home and step up when he can, and then it was kind of just nice to see how they're mixing things up here for next season, right? Obviously, Bridgman's probably going to step into that Babcock role and provide that kind of situation, and then see what Hamilton can bring offensively this year. And like you said, Peranich, yeah, the offensive's there. He's just got a battle being that small of a guy, right? Which is guys can do it. Like you said, McCutcheon, he handles it right for his career.
I think Peranich is just brilliant with the way he uses his stick. He's just, and he's really good with it. He gets inside those bigger guys and finds a way to strip guys of the puck, and that's really good. Yeah, he's got some good foot speed too. So I'm not going to compare him maybe to what Riker Evans became, but he could be a similar type player to Riker Evans as well too, with the offense down the road. So I'm really excited to see what he does next year, and he's a really good guy to be around too.
I think they're hoping for that with Jet Deschamps.
It was Jet.
Just a smaller guy who thinks the game at a high level, clearly can skate, pretty shifty. He's an offensive-minded defenseman, right? And they do have that. They do have some offensive defensemen. Listen, I'll say anything's better than what they had 2 years ago, where it was Haynes, Slaney, Gibson, on the back end, Buchkowski,
Don't remind us.
etc. Because nobody could move the puck up the ice. Like, you need to be able to get the puck to your forwards, right?
Yeah.
Like, even your first pass is so important.
It's very no.
And if those guys like I'm not trying to diss those guys, but it's like they're fine. You can have those players, but you can't have all 6 defensemen being those type of players. Like, you need to have guys that are able to move the puck up the ice. And Gibson was really the only guy that could do it after Berg left. Like, that was a huge hole that was missing. Right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that first pass is most important, right? Because you don't make that first pass, it's in your own end, it's a turnover, you're stuck in your own end, et cetera, et cetera. So that first pass is most important, and that's key. And so we've seen some guys that can make that, and like I said, the talent level's just coming up, right? So that's nice to see.
We haven't talked about Julie Mays yet, Drew.
No,
I was
not as much
just
as
about
we
to
should
say,
have,
Led the team in scoring this year.
To move to the forwards, what's our thoughts there?
Well, if we're talking about Julian Mays, I think that was a great trade. Cole Temple's obviously maybe not playing right now, but did pretty well in Everett, so that's great for him because he was a good guy. But yeah, Julian Mays, I've said it countless times, he stepped right into the Pats lineup and kept scoring at a relatively similar pace as he did when he was in Everett, and that was tough to do in Regina when offense was hard to come by, and
9 shutouts.
tons of skill.
Exactly.
Yeah, 9
He had
shutouts
42 points,
exactly.
right?
So, but his skill with the puck is tremendous. He's
Yeah, we
a
haven't
great
seen
puck
anybody
handler.
like him in a while.
Yeah,
right.
he
His
can-
hand skills are
and in
top
tight
notch.
too.
Yeah.
Like, he can stick handle in a phone booth.
Yeah.
But and his playmaking ability is
Can pass
premier.
very well.
So I love his playmaking ability. And I think his goal scoring is going to step up as he gets a little bit more confidence and creates maybe some more shooting lanes for himself because he's got the skill to do it. He can make 1 or 2 moves and then all of a sudden he's home free to the net. So possibly, I think Rob Vanstone said possibly 100-point player. So we'll see if he gets there.
To me, my favorite forward to watch was the Rookie of the Year, Zach Lansard, this year.
Lots of skill there too.
Yeah.
Especially
Plays
as the
hard.
games. And he's got a great work ethic. And as the games went on and he got more experience, and Ryan Smith said after 40 games these guys aren't rookies anymore, and he was kind of playing like he wasn't a rookie anymore because his confidence just stepped up, and he's got a tremendous shot. I thought it was one of the big things he brought was just a tremendous wrist shot. So I'm excited for him, perhaps the most. There's a lot of guys, but I really did like Zach Lansard and played through some really difficult personal stuff this year, and just gave it his A+ effort every night. So that just speaks to his character, and you forget how young he is. So it was great to see.
Forget how young half these guys are.
Exactly.
17 and under.
Youngest team in the league. Yeah.
He's probably got the most offensive upside out of the 316s this year. Really like Klassen's all-around game. He's going to be more of an all-around player, I think, in the long run. And then Kuzma, I think he's going to be that power forward. I think he's got some really good upside as well. So all 316s looked really well, I thought.
And these are all guys that they picked in the 3rd and 4th round.
Yeah,
right?
they're
Klassen and Kuzma were in the 3rd round, and Zach Lansard was a 4th round pick.
Yeah, they're not top 2-round guys, right? So
Well, that's the thing. Like, I remember when Al Miller first joined the team as the general manager, and one of the first things he said was, I like the 08 draft, but wouldn't that be a lot better if you had a 1 and a 2, meaning a player that you took in the 1st and 2nd round, right? It's great. You got these 3 players, in the 3rd and 4th round, and then Deschamps later on, and I know he hasn't played a game just yet, so it remains to be seen, and there's still a few other players from that draft who I believe are good but haven't signed just yet, being, Maddox Monquist is another example, and Hudson Kowalchuk is another really good player. Those players haven't signed yet. They were more NCAA players, but now that with the rule change, they have the option to come. So that's going to be interesting to see on where they end up this summer.
More competition, potentially.
More competition, exactly. So you have that, and that being said, right, that's why what Al Miller did as far as bringing in all these draft picks were so important, because say you hit on guys in the 3rd and 4th round, and you also complement them with a guy that you took with your 1st or 2nd overall pick, whether it's Maddox Schultz or Liam Pugh, the 2 players that are hyped up to be 1 or 2 in this draft, or 1, 2 in that order, right? So you add in right? A Lancer type player, a Kuzma and a Clausen, and then you're like, okay, we can build around these guys that we drafted, not that we have to go and trade for.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that's why what Allen's doing had to be done. He had to make the moves that he made.
100%.
And the last 2 drafts, the team is banking on players that they took in the 3rd and 4th round. In the 2nd round, with getting Wagner and Failer in the 2nd round last year, Hanby, Paul in the 3rd and 4th round, and Drake Mooney. Those are the guys they're banking on right now. They're not banking on 2 guys that they took in the 1st round, which is what's going to happen this year because they have 2 first-round picks, right?
Yeah, that's how you build your depth, right? With quality 3rd, 4th round guys, right? That can.
You're not going to
produce at
get a
the
Tanner
temperature.
Howe in the 4th round every time.
No, exactly.
But if your 4th and 5th round picks turn
Are
into
solid players. Yeah.
like Braxton Whitehead, say for example, you go back to the 2019 draft. Okay, Leighton Feist was picked in the 1st round. Okay, didn't play in the league really as a 20, right? Finished junior A. Okay, your 2nd round pick didn't come, right? Then you move on to the guys that you took in the 3rd round. Okay, your best player from that 3rd round was on your team as a 20, good complementary player, right? But the guys that you took in the 1st and 2nd round that were supposed to be your cornerstone pieces didn't pan out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why you can have a Braxton Whitehead on your team. That's why I don't like when those types of players have a lot of pressure put on them to come in right away and be the guy, because I think it's too much to ask when you're picking in the 3rd and 4th round. That's why it's so important to hold on to your picks. Look at the teams that have had success. Look at the Edmonton Oil Kings. They're picking in the lottery, and they're going to Game 7 against the Prince Albert Raiders. Like, how great does Kirk Hill feel right now after winning a championship 3 years ago?
Yeah,
To be back in the same spot.
They've been a pretty consistent team. He's done a very good job there. Pat's
How about
alumni.
Seattle? Like,
And I know Brandon doesn't have a ton of playoff success, but they never trade their picks, and they rarely have down years in the regular season. So
and nor does Medicine Hat.
nor does Medicine Hat. So it works.
And
So
look what
why
Everett
not
did.
do what works?
Look how good Everett was, and they had the 1st overall pick, right?
Yeah.
They made some smart moves,
And they've
right?
never missed the playoffs in franchise
Exactly,
history.
right?
So,
That was a
yeah.
very good trade to move
Yeah, it was.
Zellweger and get
Oh.
what they got back from Kamloops,
Yeah.
because they still made the playoffs
Yep.
that year. They didn't have to trade Jackson Berezowski, etc. They held on to Roost. They got Hamill as well, by the way, in that trade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And talk about Brandon there. Like, they're still reaping the benefits of that Shen trade. Like,
Yeah, they are.
10 plus years
Really?
ago. Yeah. Like, it's that trade tree is still going. It's crazy. And then the moves that they made in 18 to unload when they seen Moose Jaw, Regina, and Swift Current all loading up. So they moved guys I think they moved 2 guys for 4 first rounds that year. And
yeah, because they had 2 first-round picks in the 2021 draft, which they took Ellick and McQueen. They moved Ellick for Gavin, so you're getting another.
Yeah.
He was picked 2nd overall behind Cadden, right?
Yeah.
And then they took Quinn Manti in the 2020 draft in the 1st round. You look at the players they have on their team right now. They drafted quite well. Then we have they have Sirkan coming up,
Yep.
right? Who pretty good player on the Pac Canadians. They have the Prab Bathal, out of Winnipeg. He's supposed to be a high end player as well. Even some of the 16-year-olds they had on their team this year, the 2 kids they took in the 1st round, Georgios Pantelis, and of course Kevin's favorite player,
Trickle. Or no, who is it?
Jacobson.
Oh, Jacobson.
yeah, Jacobson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So no, yeah. Once they've kind of kept going.
And they have picks that they got for the guy they traded to Portland last year,
Danielson.
Danielson.
Anderson. Yeah. Right. So Kelly McCurran may be gone, but they're still kind of rolling pretty smartly there.
Let's like Marty Murray. You have to remember, he's a wheat king. It's in his blood.
Yeah.
And Kelly McCrimmon would have coached him, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it's
exactly.
safe to
Yeah.
say that they kind of share the same philosophy.
Yeah. For sure.
Mentored and probably is still mentoring him a little bit.
I'm sure they.
I'm
have
sure he's a phone call away, right?
Yeah.
There's.
Doesn't he have an office in the building still?
I don't know, but I know he's still an alternate governor.
Yeah,
Is he?
exactly,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it
Still
says on their
involved. He's
website.
still involved.
He's still involved. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like-
It's
You're not reinventing the wheel here, guys.
No, you just got to be smart about things, right? You know,
And they have the right guys in charge right now with Dale Durkach and his scouting experience. My favorite Dale Durkach stories that he tells is, you know, when he was with Prince Albert and they drafted Josh Morrissey, right? Because, you know, we had this conversation with him, I think, on Pat's TV, and he talked about how they had the 7th pick, I think. I'd have to look. And they had Josh Morrissey on their list, ranked 2. Right? So if they pick 2nd overall, so when they saw him drop, they were like dancing. And they were like, I can't believe we're going to get this guy. And Al Miller tells the story of Denton Matejchuk, right? Where they got Matejchuk at 11, but his scouting staff and Jason Ripplinger actually had him ranked a lot higher. Mm-hmm. And he dropped to them, and there's a reason why Moose Jaw won a championship, because obviously getting Matejchuk at 11 and getting Furcus in the 4th round and getting Unger in the 3rd the year after and picking Braden Yager was a 3rd overall because Height went 2.
Yeah.
Because Prince George won the lottery that year. They went from 4 to 2. Like, it set their franchise up for years to come. Good trades that Al Miller made in Moose Jaw as well. Like, that Jet Wu trade set them up for a long time with Calgary. I mean, to get Ryder Korzak, who was a really good player for them, and then get that 1st round pick to get Matejchuk, I mean, only helped, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's hopefully what is going to come this way, right? What else? Anything specific? Any other? We haven't talked about the goalies, and Drew touched on it. You know, Kelton Pine coming back. See what kind of competition there is going to be there. There isn't any WHL experience really behind him, but that's not saying Al won't bring in something. But if he can take another step like he did this summer, that'd be nice to see. And like you said, he's got lots of experience. And he's 20. He can hold the fort for sure, and we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, and I guess if there isn't really competition for that starting role, Kelton Pine's probably the guy that doesn't need it, because you saw the work that he put in this past year. Now, there was that competition, obviously, with Huey, but he's not going to want to come in and regress back to what he was a couple years ago. So, I mean, 20 now, lots of experience, and just such a tremendous start to the season, and was responsible for many of the wins that the Pats got this year. So I don't think he necessarily needs that internal competition. It's obviously great to have, but I think he's going to be really solid and maybe one of the better goaltenders again in the league, and now able to probably lead his team to push for one of the final playoff spots, and I think they'll get it.
And having Max Paddock around all the time probably helps.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully Tabashnik can come in and be a good second option, as a backup. He'll be 18, so he'll have to play a little bit, right? He's not a 17-year-old goaltender. It's nice to have another local, like to have 2 local, like Kevin.
Unbelievable.
Has
It's been years.
Really?
Yeah.
Has it happened?
Years ago.
Like a long time?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Like, are we talking like?
Years ago.
Okay. Like
decades.
Which
Decades.
exact year?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go dig.
You don't want to?
No, I'm not gonna dig right now.
If it happens, will you?
Of course.
Okay, good.
100%.
But Al was pretty high when you asked him about the goaltending, moves that he made. They were pretty high on Tabashnik, and they wanted him.
Yeah,
So
he basically said they were going to make the trade no matter what.
they were picking up Tabashnik no matter what.
Well,
and
they
then-
moved Cruz Chase out in order to make room for him, right?
Yeah, well, they were bringing
Yeah, it sounded
Tabashnik
like
in,
the way Al said it, like they were going to pick up Tabby no matter what.
and then they were going to
So-
deal with whatever, right, and do whatever they could to
There-
make a room for him.
There could be some decent competition for that backup role
Yeah,
with,
I
with
think so.
Mooney and Tabashnik, I think, for sure. So
Mooney's a little young yet, I think.
Mooney's-
I don't.
He's a little ways away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's not set in stone, but I would
surprised.
put money on Tabashnik being a backup.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
too. But I think there's a little
when
push.
you're a goalie, like, I hate to say it, like, to me the weirdest thing this year, and I don't know what happened behind the scenes, and I never asked, but why Eric too sat around all year in Calgary, like literally, like didn't play. He played to start the year,
Yeah,
and I
he
like
played
him a
well.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But they bring in Hauser. Miller's a great goalie because Hauser's been out, right? In the playoffs, you have to carry 3,
yeah.
right? Just in case, and that happened with Calgary with Hauser being out. Obviously, it didn't matter because they swept Saskatoon with Miller in net, and from what I understand, he was pretty good in net.
Played pretty well.
Yeah, and a 16-year-old goalie sat around and just took shots in practice, right? Like as a goalie, you need to play. So
Yeah.
whether Mooney goes back to PHA, which is somewhat close to Regina in Carenport, just an hour away, or goes somewhere else, like he needs to play. He's 16. He can't
Exactly.
sit and back up Kelton Pine.
No.
all year.
Unless he comes in and blows their socks off.
Yeah. And then if you're trying to compete, like
Yeah.
There's-
Is he gonna help you compete? I don't think so.
Does
right?
Malacca fit into there anywhere?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
He'll be
that's-
19. He's got a handful of WHL games. Does
He's
he
played
fit in?
he's played WHL game every year since he's 16. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
So he's probably the more fair name to say pushes Tabashnuk if there's
But
some
he's 19,
competition there.
so-
He's 19.
19-year-old rookie.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's
tough.
So
tough to do.
you're gonna send your 18 somewhere else.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
That's kind
that
of
might be the more interesting competition.
Well, we'll see. Hey, I mean, if this guy's a stud, like you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Sebastian just goes to junior A, gets experience there, and steps in next year or whatever, right? But yeah, goaltending is such it's such a
and what?
finicky.
And does Al decide to maybe pick an import goalie?
When's the last time an import goalie worked in our league? Let's be honest. I guess
An import in
Spooner
our
was pretty good
league?
last year in.
Stebatek's do.
Portland right now.
Oh yeah,
They had Spooner last year,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
no,
or
they're
last
few
year,
and
2
far
years ago.
between. That's for sure.
but,
But
you never know.
you never know, right?
Because with all the NCAA stuff, a lot of those guys are coming over here to go to the NCAA. Maybe they'll take
you know what's weird, and
detour.
as a goalie guy myself, it's so tough to judge goalies in junior at a young age. That's why they need time.
Yeah.
You know, like
Well, even-
it's hard to be a stud goalie at 17, 18 years old. I'm sorry.
Even look at Mooney. His stats weren't great in the regular season, and then he turned it
tore
on
it up in the
in the
playoffs.
playoffs. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was the
exactly.
MVP, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't know how good PHA is, but I mean they had a good run in the playoffs. So,
I mean, if you're getting volume of shots and you're continuing to get better and getting playing time, like for goalies, like that's what matters the most,
Yep.
yeah,
right? Like
live action
sitting on the bench, it's hard.
practice isn't the same, right?
I think that's why it took Pine a little bit of time to kind of break out. Like, I know you could look at his stats and say, did he really break out? Like, you have to be there to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
you just
and-
look at his stats. It's no, you got to see him play, and we saw him play every
Yeah.
game, right?
Which is
So-
why he was the team MVP.
exactly.
And if he's healthy, he's probably a 52 to 55 game goaltender next year.
That's
so
a lot of games.
yeah.
That's a lot of games, Drew. Guys don't do that no more.
At least 45.
Look what
I'd
happened
say.
to Drew Sim. He still talks about his hips.
At least 45, I'd say. So we'll see. Maybe we can take a bet on that and then revisit it a year from now.
Okay, what
but-
did Portland do? Kevin knows the answer. What did Portland do this year? They literally went, like, both goalies played almost the exact same amount of games, and they're playing right now against Prince
They
George.
started the season with like 5 goalies too. They were
Yeah.
all over the place with their
Yeah,
goaltending.
they had some issues there.
Like,
but-
I'm not saying I want to go back to 2 years ago where it was like, okay, who's grabbing the job? And Pine and Hugh A played the exact same amount of games, 30-80 apiece, right? But, like,
yeah, somebody.
I think if you're 20, like, Pine needs to grab the starting job. I don't think he needs to play 55 games, but I just have a little bit of a different opinion on workload.
This isn't Grant Fear we're talking about.
We'll revisit.
I was just
let's
looking at
revisit a year.
75 games in 1 year.
yeah.
75 in 1 year. Yeah,
Yeah, I was
that's
looking at
right.
that.
Yeah, but you're right. It's different than it was, but it's definitely his position to lose. But I don't think he's gonna lose it. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll tone that down to 45 games. We'll revisit it.
Grant Fear's off ice training was a little different.
Just a teeny bit.
Yeah, times have changed, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, what else do we got about this team? You know, it's there for the taking, right? For them to step up, it'd be. a
What's
little
the rest of the division gonna look
Yeah.
like? Like, what type of a
Oh,
division
don't-
are they
don't-
gonna have?
don't-
It's
Don't
'cause
start now.
It's so hard because everybody thought Saskatoon was gonna, fall off a cliff, and then they didn't, and they're looking like they're not gonna fall off a cliff and maybe be at least half decent. And Swift Current at best is probably gonna be what they were this year.
Swift Current's losing Reed Dick though.
So
Yeah, I was gonna
that's
say,
the big
that's
thing
kinda-
for
yeah.
them. And
But
Moose Jaw's
Swift
not
Current
gonna
seems
be
to
good.
be able to
so-
find the
Yeah, they're losing
goalies.
guys to college.
The Bernie's going,
Yeah.
right? He's not
Sounds
coming
like
back
it.
for 20.
No.
He's one of the first guys that's official. Well,
Well, Tulk
Tulk too.
Talk
yeah.
was the first
Yeah.
to say that he was leaving. I mean,
Leaving
hey,
early.
that's not set in stone, but it
Yeah, it sounds like
there's a lot
Bernie's
of guys
going.
that are committed college. Gould, Bernie.
after they're 20, but Bernie's going as a 20,
Okay.
right? So it sounds like he's one of the
Good for
first
him.
ones. Yeah, no, for sure. A smaller guy, but he's really carved out a good career here in the WHL, right?
He'll be a good college player.
It's going to be a very interesting division next year.
Yeah. Brandon should take a step next year. They should be better.
PA will still be pretty
PA
good.
should be good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Like Swift Current, like Chad Leslie might say, "Hey, we need to pick some young players. Let's trade Misselbacher." Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, they might do a rebuild too. So
Just kind of a step back a little bit. But they seem to find goalies. Like, Reed Dick's gone. I don't know,
they still have their backup.
Yeah.
Rocha,
Yeah, and then they'll bring in Bernie Weston as.
maybe
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they seem to find goalies somehow. The last 10 years they've been able to find good goalies. But and then
Yeah, that's right. Even going back to Isaac Poulter.
yeah, Poulter, and before that it was Hofer
Yeah.
and such like that. So and
Skinner.
there you go. Well,
Skinner.
they trade for him, but the Central Division is going to be a lot different next year, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's maybe the shift is going to slide back to the Eastern Division, where the Central has been kind of the down division for the last few years. Maybe switches back here, and the East Division teams can kind of take the mantle back. But
I think there's room based on what's going to happen to some teams to have a little help for the Pats to make the playoffs next year. So not only them doing it themselves, but some teams falling a little bit. Obviously not Medicine Hat, but there's a couple other teams, and Edmonton's going to probably take a step too.
Yep.
So
Calgary, Lethbridge are the ones that are going to really probably take a step back next year.
So and Moose Jaw still won't be good. Saskatoon and Swift Current will be bubble playoff teams. So there's room for the Pats to fit into the mixture next year, and maybe we'll be doing this a little bit later, and we'll be
hopefully we're doing it
calling games on this TV, this new Velocity thing right now, and
Victory
enjoying
Plus.
our Victory Plus, whatever it's called. I got to get home and check it out some more.
Yeah.
So
No, this is your first experience, and yeah, it's been good. I've been throwing it on every night. I haven't sat down and watched too closely some of these games, but the quality has improved. If you
It's
haven't been
unbelievable.
watching, yeah,
That was-
Compared to WHL Live.
yeah,
it's-
that was the first thing I noticed was just NHL quality picture. So
yeah.
Dante's taking selfies right now.
I am taking selfies right now.
But yeah, other off ice news is like obviously the big one with Penticton coming in and Chilliwack next season. What are your thoughts on that?
well, it didn't work in Chilliwack the first time. They ended up in Victoria, or maybe that was the second time. Kevin, you'd probably be able to answer that, but
First time.
So we'll see if second time's the charm. And
Well, one of the first things they did was apologize to the people of Chilliwack for what happened the last time.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened exactly, but it sounded like it wasn't a good split between the league and Chilliwack. So
Okay. I know Penticton's a nice city, so Dante will enjoy it. I'm not sure if you've been there, Dante.
I have
but
when I was in junior A.
It's a nice city. Yeah, I guess you would have been. Skaha Lake and Okanagan Lake. You got to do the river float between the two lakes and go there during the Peach Festival this summer. So, it's a very nice city, and obviously that's a very nice building for Junior A. It fits right into major juniors. So what type of team they'll have, I guess that remains to be seen. But expansion's good in some ways, but in other ways it kind of dilutes the product a little bit for NHL scouts, I guess.
But does it dilute it? Because the whole NCAA thing has changed
Yeah,
everything.
That's kind of what their
that's the thing.
reasoning behind it was,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
But the thing is, you're adding two teams to the West. Now you're really imbalanced, and you can't move anybody conferences. You're gonna have to add another two, at least one in the West or in the East now, right? Obviously, the Alberta situation or the Alberta division would be key, but I don't know. There's lots of rumors about Brooks and stuff. But is Brooks big enough to handle it? Is there? They've got a new building, but is it WHL quality? I don't know, right? So it's kind of obviously one. They needed one in the West. And then one in the East would have been ideal, but they couldn't pass up Chilliwack. Just the logistical situation there seems they're pretty high on that spot. Like it's good for the BC teams.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Because Kevin and I were talking, what other than Winnipeg, what's your spot in the East? Like where do you bring a team to in the East?
I was going to say, I don't think it ever happens in Winnipeg again, but I know there used to be talk about Estevan, and they got a very nice building there. Spectra Place, it was once called when it first opened. I'm not sure of the name now, but it's
Yeah.
similar to what Moose Jaw has right now, a little bit smaller, but there's room to add seats. It's not the biggest city, but it's similar in size to Yorkton or Swift Current. Maybe Lloydminster.
Yeah, that's the other one. I just don't know what they have for building.
Travel-wise, I don't think Fort McMurray would be reasonable, although
Yeah.
that's a city of nearly 100,000 people now, and it's, from what I hear, its own little oasis up there. So that's a team that could probably have the money to pay for the travel that they'd have, but it's, 5 hours from Edmonton? So
Yeah. You're looking at a PG situation.
it would be
right?
another PG situation for sure. So I don't know other than those places.
Or if
Yeah.
you went to like Billings or places like that.
Well, that'd be
that's-
cool,
That's
yeah.
still, that's a long ways away too. Like they're
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere compared to everybody else. So it would be interesting. It'd
Yeah.
be interesting these next couple of years.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it's crazy how fast they're going to be bringing an expansion team in. Usually they have a year plus.
Yeah,
of
like the
little,
Chilliwack situation. You got a whole year to
Yeah.
figure it out, right?
Yeah. All of a sudden it's like, here you got a team next year. You got like 4 months.
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
at it.
Right, and like we said, so they got to bring in the expansion draft and push everything else back. So it'll be interesting to see. But obviously, listen to that press conference. They've been working 2 teams almost, like they've been working already since they kind of sold the league on them coming in, and then them to still have a good on ice product and not get, not lose their focus on the ice and still have a quality team. And obviously, they've been a model franchise in the junior A ranks for forever.
The main owner guy seems like a pretty neat
Yeah.
and cool guy to talk to.
So.
Even though there's NHL teams, is there room in the market for 2 junior teams in Edmonton or 2 junior teams in Calgary? Does that work?
There's not
Calgary-
enough buildings in Calgary.
Calgary,
Yeah.
like I don't know, like how are they making that
Share
work?
in that one, yeah.
Can we
4
stop with
teams?
the expansion, guys? After this, please.
No, that's fine.
Can we just stop right here?
Not a fan, hey.
Too many teams.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well,
I
you
don't
lose-
disagree.
You lose because you got to play everybody at least once. So do you lose games against conference
divisions.
rivals or
You
in your
do.
division, and
You lose in division games.
that takes
You
away
do.
from playoff races and a little bit of the competitiveness.
Too many teams, guys.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So
Like I
the
said,
reason why they're going to more teams is because they're anticipating with the NCAA
Yes.
Mhm.
rule,
more players available.
more players available, right? It's going to affect all the lower leagues. We know that. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I really hope that it doesn't water the league down.
Yeah, I do as well.
The unfortunate thing, guys, is the players are going to have so many more options. The power is going to be in the players.
Yeah,
Because they can just leave, literally.
It's now because of the NCAA thing. It's happening right now.
Well, I mean, there hasn't been any loyalty in the transfer portal either.
Exactly.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
So
no, you look at
why do you think there'll be any loyalty because of all the agents and stuff like that? It's honestly, hockey is just a weird spot right now.
you look at the football in NCAA and it's ridiculous. Schools have a full different team the next year. You look at what Deion Sanders did when he went to Colorado. Like he punted 60 players,
And
brought in 60 players.
How much money do some of those guys make? Like,
Well, see, that's the thing. So it's changing right away here. Like not that it's going away from the NIL stuff, but there's still going to be the NIL opportunities. But now it's called rev share,
Right.
and the schools are going to be paying the players directly.
okay.
And then there's still going to be the NIL opportunities on the side as well. So it's going to change. So obviously, as everybody's talking about players from the CHL going down to NCAA. Obviously, yeah, you can go down there right now, but they can't make money, right? They're on a student visa. You cannot make any money, right? So now I don't know how that's going to change when the school's paying you. I don't know if that's going to be legal or not. And obviously with the administration,
You're still under a student visa. So
yeah,
they
so I
can't
don't know
pay
if
you,
they're.
I don't think.
So I don't know how that changes. And obviously with the administration down there, are you going to skirt any rules down there as a international student? Probably not, right? And like the NCAA is in court daily here. Like it is, and like I said, stuff's changing by the minute, and it's all. We'll see what happens this fall because lots of stuff's changing this summer, like going to the rev share where the schools are paying directly. But I mean, it's limited though. Like the budget, there's going to be a budget, and I don't know how it's going to be enforced. But like 90% of the budget is going to football, right? 10% of the budget's going to go to basketball, baseball, track and field, hockey, etc. Right? Hockey's way down on the totem pole. Ain't no school is going to be paying millions and millions of dollars for CHL players to come down there. maybe one or two guys, obviously the names are out there, but maybe one or two guys can do that. But, I mean, there isn't going to be a lot of money for CHL players down in the NCAA.
And then maybe
To pull them out of CHL
so-
after the fact, after they complete their eligibility here. That's a different story, right? But, I mean, for them to pull guys out of CHL, it's going to be tough, real tough.
Which is a good thing then for the CHL, obviously.
Yeah.
They're not losing some of those high-end names necessarily because of money.
No, yeah, hockey's not making schools money. The football and the basketball is, and that's it. And they drive the rest of they fund the rest of the sports, right? So it's all about football, and everything else is an afterthought. You look at how the conferences changed. Like you look at all the Pacific schools that are in Eastern conferences now. That's all because of football. It's all because of money, TV money, et cetera, et cetera. So everything else is an afterthought after football. So I know lots of rumors out there about CHL players, but see what actually happens. So what else we got? Maybe some closing thoughts here? And
my closing thoughts are, I think fans should be excited for the next month or so, because not
Lots
only
happening.
will this week's lottery say where the team drafts in the WHL Prospects Draft, but the U.S. Priority Draft as well, which will be huge. Okay, this honestly, guys, this might be the last U.S. draft, because honestly, I won't be surprised if they get rid of this draft and just
roll it in. But how they had it before, right?
How they had it before, because I don't know. It's kind of it's not cheating, but it's kind of or these picks are eligible to be traded or whatever, right? I don't know if they are actually.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think you can trade these picks, just like the import draft.
Yeah.
Anyways,
they stopped trading import picks too.
yeah, so you have and then they're going to have a high pick in the CHL import draft as well, whether that means anything or not, because you know how it works.
Such a crapshoot, right?
It's a crapshoot, to be honest. You have to know the right people and the agents and players that get drafted by NHL clubs that you have connection with, and they want to send them to junior, whatever.
Yeah.
And
And then maybe the OHL and the WHL can get on the same page and have the same compensation for these players too, right? So.
Yeah, right.
What about the talk of the USHL competing in the Memorial Cup?
No, that's
Is that
no.
going
Yeah,
to happen?
no.
Do we want to
No.
get into that?
No, not at all.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, Drew.
Question answered.
Absolutely not.
No interest in that. Anyway, sorry, Dante, cut you off.
No, that's really it. I think it's an exciting time to be a Pats fan.
Definitely,
And I think the next month is going to be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
The next month might set the Pats up for a few years. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Be
Hopefully.
looking back in a couple years and saying, "Wow, we're not." Instead of sitting here looking back, going, shoot,
Man,
man, we didn't have picks.
Yeah,
Man, we didn't
exactly.
draft the right players. We missed on this guy."
Hopefully in a couple years they'll be battling for a championship.
yeah. No, that's the hope, right?
Absolutely. And like I said at the start, you can see the pieces coming together, and now it's time to take that next step, and there'll be a next step next year. I'm confident in that.
Yeah, there'll be a step of some sort. Hopefully it's, like I said, it gets into the playoff and get that experience for the future years, right? You can't go from the bottom to the top in 1 year, so we're not expecting that. But like Dante said, you get that experience, get a round or two, and build from there, right? So, well, with
And I
that,
don't see them making 18 trades this year.
no.
That was something else.
But like we said, it had to be done, and I think it's going to work
Tore
out.
right down to the studs, right down to the bare bones. And, so
And-
I never in my wildest imagination saw this happening, and it was very, very interesting.
That's for
And
sure.
it's in my opinion, it's been for the good.
Mhm.
It's kind of short-term pain for hopefully long-term gain.
And like none of them were shocking except the Temple Mays trade, and
It wasn't really shocking. It was just like, really?
Yeah, it was just
It wasn't like a shock, because
No.
it felt like everybody was on the table. But we were talking literally like the week before that Temple was kind of going to be like the building block
with Hamilton,
with
right?
Hamilton. Yeah,
the
it was like
5,
it was gonna
6,
be like
or
the,
4-5 in the
it's going
draft.
to be the,
right?
the forward building block, and all of a sudden it's like gone.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting season.
Definitely. So, well, with that, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming over and hammering this out again. And hopefully, yeah, like I said, there's some more optimism and some more fun stuff to talk about next year. With that, thank you all, and have a good night, everybody.